Hey y'all, welcome to another episode of Soccer for Us. This is Bart, and I am excited to confirm again that the United States men's national team has qualified for the 2022 FIFA World Cup in Qatar. We are here today to talk about that. It wasn't exactly easy. It wasn't hard. It wasn't direct, but it wasn't problematic. But I think that when you have a chance to look back on everything and look at the 14 total matches we played, that we should take the opportunity to do so. So to do that, I am bringing back to the podcast my old friend Caleb Cook, the purveyor of US Soccer Corner on Twitter, to look back, debrief, and take account of everything that happened, not just the pieces. We've had the full dinner. Now we get to judge it. Caleb, are you full? Are you satisfied? How do you feel about that qualifying campaign?
Man, I'm afraid to say. If I say I'm satisfied and I'm happy that we qualified, half of Twitter is going to kill me because I'm happy that we qualified, which I still don't understand why we're upset about that. And then if I say that I'm not satisfied and I'm not happy because qualification shouldn't be something to be happy about, then I'm confused again because we didn't do that the last cycle. So why would I not be happy? I don't understand how there's so many people that find ways to not be happy about things that you should just be happy about.
Yeah, it feels good to say that the United States is qualified for the World Cup again. It feels good to know that we will get to watch them in November. It feels really good to know that, there's a lot of talent in this team. I mean, we qualified as the youngest team to qualify to the World Cup. We will, in all likelihood, be the youngest team at the World Cup. That's pretty awesome. And, we got to watch this team in 14 competitive matches do it. Now, yes, the Yanks finished third, which was the bare minimum to qualify. There's no escaping that fact that it was the bare minimum. However, I do, the more I look back on that Costa Rica game, the more I just look at it as a team that didn't have the motivation to push themselves the way that a team that may have had something to play for would have had to push themselves, because those guys were tired. They had run for 3 games straight for the most part, and there wasn't the urgency that maybe would have been had in other matches. So I don't know. I'm not sure how. I'm still digesting that Costa Rica match to make sure that I'm not reacting to it too much, because I don't think there's a whole lot to take from it. But even past that, looking at the qualification cycle as a whole, I just want to say that I think this was tougher than I think we thought it was going to be. Do you agree that it was, the whole cycle was tougher than I think we thought?
Yeah.
Coming off of a Gold Cup and a Nations Cup this summer, with all the talent we have.
There's a lot of media. There's a lot of media out there, right? I mean, whether it's written, video, podcast, audio, whatever. We see all these former players talking about how difficult it is to qualify in CONCACAF. You've got current players talking about how difficult it is to play in CONCACAF and qualify. And so that being said, if it's already a difficult thing, and then, as you talked about a second ago, we're the youngest team that qualified for the World Cup. By, I think the last I looked, almost a full 2 years younger than the second youngest team, which was Ecuador. I think it was 23.7 was the average years. I mean, I think they looked at like total players used in the qualification process. It was Statista is the website I was using. 23.7. That's a youth national team, and we just qualified for a World Cup in CONCACAF. It's difficult. It's a difficult thing to do, and I feel like a lot of people, they're like, yeah, but you should. I mean, yeah, we should, but it's not something you can take for granted, regardless. So yeah, I think it's an extremely difficult thing, and provided the context of being such a young team and having 2 guys, 3 guys here and there that have gone through the process before. I think throughout the entire cycle, what you had Brooks a little bit, Yedlin, Acosta, Pulisic. Who
Yeah.
else? Who else am I missing? I mean,
I think those are the only guys who were part of a qualification campaign before that. And DeAndre Edlin's the only guy right
still,
now who,
yeah.
was part of a World Cup. And we can talk about John Brooks if we want to, but the reality is DeAndre Edlin, especially the guys who took the field often, the only guy who was part of a World Cup. And he's still young, like comparatively.
Yeah.
Like he's not old.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I just think it's important to, and I talk about context all the time on, Twitter. People like to ignore and cherry pick. And I think the fact that we are such a young team and so inexperienced played a part in the bumpy road that we took
Yeah.
to ultimately qualify. Because I'm with you. I mean, third place, barely scraping by. You'd like to do better, but at the end of the day, I think not only is it a difficult process, not only are we the youngest to it, you have the fact that the last cycle failed to do so. So you have
Right.
added pressure.
Right.
So at the end of the day, I mean, I'm ecstatic.
We'll break down window by window how things went. But before we get to that, I do just, again, want to kind of point out some things that I think make this tough. I mean, we know CONCACAF is tough because of a lot of reasons. But beyond that, I mean, we're talking about 3 match windows. We had 14 matches within the span of 6 months, right? It was longer than that, but from September to, I think it was 7 months total, September through March. Maybe it was 6. I don't know. I don't do math. But we had a lot of matches for the international team in a very short amount of time. We had those 3 match windows, which is, I mean, new for everyone, right? Like, that was new. We've never had to deal with that before. Berhalter's never had to deal with that before. Yedlin didn't deal with that. Acosta, Pulisic didn't deal with that. Brooks hasn't. Like, that was tough for everyone. You added 2 more teams to the final qualification group, which meant 4 more matches, which meant 2 more CONCACAF away trips. I think that played a lot into it, because not only are you talking about more matches and all that, you're talking about now more travel within a window. And back in the previous editions, it was a Friday, Tuesday. You get the guys in on a Monday at the latest, and you're getting 2 to 3 days of training, a match, a recovery day. Like, you had actual cadence an actual cadence that mimicked a little bit more like what a club season would look like. So players weren't dog tired by the end of it, and you weren't having to really hope and consider players' injury status. But I mean, the fact that we're going from, St. Paul to Hamilton or Columbus to Hamilton to St. Paul is one thing. You added the fact that we had to go from, Austin to Panama City to, where did we play that last game after that? Columbus. That's a lot of travel within one window that no one's had to deal with before. And then on top of that all, just the purveying element of COVID. Yeah. It was tough, right? Like, I think we do have to kind of step back and assess things through that lens, that it was tough.
No, you can't ignore that. Like I said, context. It's been my favorite word for the last week or so. You can't ignore it. So many people want to, but to me, that's ignorant. Like you just said, I talked about youth and inexperience, and then you just brought in the fact that they changed the way that it's done, as far as like 3 match windows, the travel, COVID, like all of that stuff. We don't think about that. So I think it's extremely important to take a step back and remind ourselves about what all these guys are going through. And again,
on top of their club. Like,
exactly. That's exactly what I was going to say. A lot of these kids, like, we have to remember with the whole youth thing, a lot of these kids are, pushing themselves to the highest limits of club soccer, and they're, battling for playing time there. Then they're coming to represent their country during an international window, going back, having to fight for their spots again. Like, all these things that people don't want to talk about. They just want to look at the big picture and, we barely qualified. Like, look, we did what we had to do. Was it ugly? Sure. Could it have been better? Absolutely. But at the end of the day, the job was done. And I know we're going to talk about that a little bit later and give grades and stuff like that. But I just think it's important to acknowledge that and not take away. Like, I mean, can you imagine standing in the locker room when Pulisic just qualified after what he's gone through and all the weight that he carried, being the face of U.S.
Mm-hmm.
soccer, and he's qualified, and then you stand in there and you say, "Yeah, but you guys were third." No one on Twitter that's sitting there, keyboard warrior, no one's going to say that in their faces. I'm sure as hell not.
And at the end of the day, these qualification campaigns, I mean, the U.S. has won. We won the group of the final group of qualification in 2006 by like a heft. Like, we looked really good in 2006 qualification. Did not make it out of the group in the World Cup. So I'm not saying it doesn't matter, because I think that you want to have a team that goes to win every match you play, and you'd love to have a team that wins every match they play, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
But at the end of the day, what matters is that you get your ticket, and Berhalter alluded to this in his press conference, and I do agree with him that you saw where this team went from September 2021 to where it was from September 2nd, 2021 to March 30th, 2022. You saw the evolution of this team. Now imagine what's going to happen between March 30th and November 21st, or what we hope will happen might be the better phrase, but there's still hope and potential to continue to grow and come together as a team. And that's the hope. That's the silver lining, the bright spot, whatever you want to talk about. Like, that's what we're hoping for. That's the positive outlook. And I think any negative outlook is good realism, but at the same time, factual for any team who made the World Cup for the most part, outside of like Brazil and maybe them. That's it.
I mean, you want to talk about people giving the U.S. crap for finishing third. Look at Portugal. Portugal, great by, right? No one's giving them
talk about a
crap.
team who did the bare minimum.
And they're the oldest
Yeah.
to qualify. So, but no one's giving them crap. I mean, maybe Portugal fans are. I don't know. I'm not a part of Portugal Twitter. Could be extremely I don't know. Who knows? But they're 28. They're extremely experienced. You got Bruno Fernandes, Cristiano Ronaldo. I mean, you got all these players that are stars, and they barely got out. Yeah, no, I understand. It's a lot different over there in Europe. Qualifying process, Italy missing 2 cycles in a row. Like, it's crazy. I understand. But the point is, Portugal's there. They're happy.
Mm-hmm.
We are US. We're there. Let's be happy. I just get tired of I feel like it's almost just forced, like on purpose. Like, I'm just going to wake up, I'm going to jump on US Twitter and then just stir some crap up.
It's okay to be appreciative.
I feel like a lot of people do that.
Yeah, I think it's okay to be appreciative of the fact that
it's okay to be happy.
Yeah.
And at the same time, could it have been better? Absolutely.
Yeah,
you can 2 things, right? I think Total Soccer Show says it all the time.
Yep.
Things can be 2 things.
Taylor Rockwell loves to say it. Things can be 2 things.
Things can be 2 things. You can be happy and also critical of some of the performances and the decisions, and at the same exact time. I am.
Well, let's talk about those individual performances, and let's go through the recap of the windows. So, again, we had 14 matches. We had 5 match windows. There we go. So a lot of soccer games. Let's go through that real quick. So we started off in September at El Salvador, a very tough opening match for this group. Got a 0-0 draw, and I think a lot of people felt that should have been better. But looking back, I think a 0-0 draw, I still feel like we could have won that game in terms of what I saw on the field.
Yeah, but like you said,
it didn't happen, but I felt like we could have.
Looking back, El Salvador's not a trash team.
No.
And Hugo Perez has got them playing really good soccer, and I'm excited for the future. They're not They're not some just cupcake candy like a Cuba or something. We went down there, like you said, the opening match, first taste for a lot of these players, and you got to draw again. It's the whole thing. Could it have been better? Absolutely, it could. You look at the talent on the paper, or you look at the rosters and compare. Sure, absolutely, but we did what we needed to do, and a lot of experience was had, and you live to fight another day. You move on.
We did. We moved on to a 1-1 tie against Canada, which was, I think, at that point, people started to hit the panic button a little too early. But
Mm-hmm.
I think rightfully so. People were going, "Hey, wait a second."
Mm-hmm.
Luckily, we followed that up with the win at Honduras 4-1. But I'll be honest that we had 3 halves of soccer in a row where we weren't really convincing.
Right.
And I think it was fair to look back at that September window, only getting 5 points. Now, granted, you hit the magical formula, whatever you want to say, but you did it in a backwards way, right? And I think to me, that's the missed opportunity here is the Honduras win at Honduras doesn't impress me the more that I look at them on a whole, right?
Especially in hindsight,
right? Like they are a mess and a half. But it's that tie against Canada at home when we definitely outpossessed them, did have chances that we probably should have buried. And we only get a draw. We make one mistake defensively, really, and they get a goal, which kind of summarizes Canada's entire qualification run, by the way. Like, I'm done with these people trying to tell me CONCACAF or Canada's like some great team. They massively outperformed XG for and against, and that's a conversation for another time. Point is, September you get 5 points. It just felt unsatisfactory. And it wasn't a great way to start the campaign. And I think that just set the tone for everything else.
Yeah, I mean, looking back now, setting the tone, like you just said, that's kind of how the whole process was, the entire cycle. It was just that like up and down, hanging on by a thread type entire cycle. So that first window, it would be a great summary for the whole thing.
And then we go to October, start off with a win against Jamaica at home, 2-0, the Tim Weah coming out party. It was a great game. Like, that was a fantastic game, but against a team that was not very good. The only thing I want to say about Jamaica is Jamaica probably should have got 2 red cards in the first half.
CONCACAF refereeing.
Yeah, it was bad. It was bad. Then we go to Panama, and this is the game I do want to focus on because we get a 1-0 loss at Panama. And I think this was Berhalter's – this loss, we had 2 in this entire campaign. This loss I put on Berhalter. Did the players perform well? No, they didn't. Yeah. Do I still believe that the 11 players he started and the subs he brought on should have done better and gotten a result? Yeah, I absolutely do. But Berhalter did not put this team in a winning position, I think, with a lot of his decisions.
I think it was one of those, we talk about it all the time. He over analyzes sometimes and overthinks and gets too cute with stuff, tries to change things up. And I think that was our first taste for this cycle was that game. It was probably the most frustrating match for most US fans. I think, again, in hindsight, looking back, that's the one where if you could have it back, you'd love to get out of there with a point, because I think it changes it changes the anxiety levels for the rest of the cycle. I think that one was messed up.
Yeah, sure. And I want to again point out that was the first time the United States has ever lost in Panama in World Cup qualifying. I need to reiterate that because it's an historic fact that needs to be pointed out when it comes to evaluating this team as a whole. And it's just one of those things where, I put this loss on Berhalter because the lineup he put out there and clearly the mentality that conveyed to the team, it wasn't a team that was set up to win. And we didn't look like we were able to win that game.
Yeah, I think it was a lot of looking ahead, trying to make changes for one game based on what's coming up.
Yeah.
Which could have happened later this very last window. But I think he learned from the Panama. And so, I will say this, just like the players are inexperienced, Greg Berhalter is inexperienced in being an international coach
Yeah.
in World Cup qualifying. He made a mistake, and I think he learned from that because it would have been very easily uh, repeated as far as this last window with Mexico looking at Panama and resting all
Yeah.
your players. If we get out of Mexico with less than a point, if we lose, then this last window is a lot tighter, and we go into that Costa Rica game with something that we need a result. But we went and we gave everything we had against Mexico. I'm jumping way ahead, but I want to point out that I feel like there was something that went wrong, but you learned from it. I say you, Great Berhalter, U.S. soccer. I've always said you learn more from your mistakes than your successes,
Absolutely.
and that was 100% a failure, a mistake. He messed up, um, but I think he learned from it.
I think he did too. I do like. I don't think we saw that level of like squad rotation ever again. We didn't see
No,
seven
not
changes from one
definitely.
match to
Right,
one,
right.
and I
Definitely not
think
that bad.
yeah. I mean, I think we all knew that rotation was one thing, but like that was
Yeah, to me that was like unnecessary rotation.
yeah,
Like way too much. And not only was it like rotation, but then there was like some players kind of, well, we'll try this. We'll try this tactic. Like, so you're not only rotating,
yeah,
but then you were trying things differently. Why?
yeah,
Uh, It's Panama.
yeah.
Yeah, no, I'm with you.
Luckily, we come back home. We get a 2-1 win against Costa Rica, but we did concede first. A very fluky goal, in my opinion, that we conceded first. And,
Yes.
I do have to point out from this window that Paul Arriola was scheduled to start all 3 matches. I hate to say luckily because he did get scratched due to an injury that ended up not being problematic. But luckily, he was scratched ahead of the start of the Costa Rica match, and Tim Weah started. And I think, again, this October window proved to me more than anything that Tim Weah is a very valuable player on this U.S. national team. And, we get out of this with 6 points. We had a great goal from Serginho Dest in that game. We had an own goal forced by Tim Weah. So we made up for that loss against Panama. But again, it's one of those, like, we didn't hit the formula.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think if you asked every single player, coach, trainer, anyone involved, if we could go back, what's the game that you'd like to redo? It's that Panama match.
Yeah.
Coming away with a point would have been huge. Yeah, winning against Jamaica, you should have. The Costa Rica match, like you said, it didn't go to plan. At first, we salvaged it, but that's the window I look back on, thinking right there could have set the tone and made the ride to qualify much smoother.
It would have been a great response to that September window.
Oh yeah, a follow up there with a 7-point window, possibly even a 9.
Mm-hmm.
Completely agree. But you talk about Tim Weah getting an opportunity and taking that opportunity. We've seen a lot of players get opportunities and not really do anything with it. Timo, man, he took that opportunity and just said, all right, thank you, put it in his back pocket. And, it's been smooth sailing for there. He offers so much. And I think one of the things that people were worried about was, he gives you more going forward, but, he's not going to do as much defensive work. And then what we saw in that match, dude was relentless. You want to talk about fire and competitive nature. I mean, he has that in spades. So I think Berhalter quickly learned, hey, we've got an upgrade there. And then, the Serginho Dest goal was just absolute class. We watch it over and over again.
It's it's a beautiful goal that he got. And I think that the Costa Rica match, Costa Rica's a good team. And we kind of needed our best talent to get that win, which happens. That's the whole point of having a lot of talent. But again, 6 points, just not quite at the pace that we wanted to be. At this point in time, it wasn't that big of an issue. We had 11 points after October. We were still in the top 3. It wasn't a problem. We go to November, and this was the window that I thought we were going to turn things around a little bit, right? So we go and get a 2-0 win against Mexico in Cincinnati, Ohio, Del Cicero again. And then we follow it up with a great first 20 minutes in Jamaica, take a 1-goal lead on the road, end up giving up a worldie of a goal to Mikel Antonio, like an absolute worldie. And we never recovered. But still we got a draw. We get 4 points out of this window, the only window in which we hit the formula, if you will. I really felt that this window was like okay, we're doing the CONCACAF thing. It's going to be fine. And I felt like the Mexico game here was really good. And again, those first 20 minutes against Jamaica were really good. It felt like Berhalter ball was happening in a good way.
I think looking back, that Mexico game, it really it was one of those psychological things where it's like, okay, boys, we can do this. Like Mexico is kings of CONCACAF, whatever, quote unquote, and we just took them down. We could play, but again, we've talked about this before. We perform well, we play well against Mexico because they actually like to play soccer,
Yep.
and that benefits us. The Jamaica game, yeah, we played well, and then like you said, that goal, that strike was stupid. I mean, stupid.
Like you can't complain about it because it wasn't. There were so many. I loved everyone breaking it down on Twitter. Like, oh well, they'd have just done this. I'm like, y'all, things in soccer do not happen perfectly all the time.
That's why the game's not played on paper. That's why we actually play
the
game. The strike was incredible. Give it to him, fantastic. But I think the inexperience came into play there.
Yeah.
Something happened that wasn't according to plan, right?
Yep.
Hey, well, this is off script. What do we do here? And they could never kind of get the train back on the tracks there. You would think that a more experienced veteran team would have been able to correct things a little bit better. You never know, but I think that's where our youth kind of came into play there. That just kind of,
that's fair.
It shook them. They were rattled, and it was just kind of like just really shaky and hanging on after that point.
Yeah.
Which it's frustrating. It is. It's frustrating because you'd like to think that we could have gotten the 3 points there, but we didn't.
Sometimes draws are fine, and that was a draw that you go, we'll take it. After the match is played, you'll take the draw. And but again, that's what CONCACAF is about. Mm-hmm. So we go into January, February. We're on, at that point, 15 points. Again, we're still in very good position to qualify. At no point during this campaign were we really in any threat to not qualify. So I think that also was part of this narrative that was out there of oh my goodness, we're in jeopardy of not qualifying. And I was like, well, yeah, but everyone was. We were every single match basically more safe than we were in danger. And we go into January, February, and this was an opportunity for us to bank a lot of points. We had, in my opinion, this was the easiest of, well, maybe not. Looking at it at the beginning, this was the easiest window we had. We had home games against El Salvador and Honduras, and that middle game was an away trip to Canada. Get a win against El Salvador, 1-0. Easily could have been more than 1 goal. We missed a lot of opportunities. This was the Jesus Ferreira it's not a false nine. It's not a false nine. He's playing a striker position. He just doesn't have to always stay high. It's not called a false nine, people. But this was the Jesus Ferreira as a real striker, first time we saw him there. And I felt uneasy that we only got a 1-goal win because those are never, it's not like you're going to be comfortable that game. But it felt the performance was fine.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm with you. You'd like to get more out of it, but getting the 3 points there was big. I think that's the game where you look at everybody wants to blame Berhalter, right, for everything, and rightfully so. He's made some dumb decisions, but to his credit, I mean, he's a pretty good coach, for where we're at the moment. But that's the game where you look at it and you say, okay, maybe it's not all Greg. There were opportunities created,
He
and the
didn't
players
score.
failed to the players failed to
Yeah.
execute. I mean, there's blame is kind of
Yeah.
hand in hand sometimes, and that's the game where you look and say, okay, regardless of Berhalter's antics with our roster and lineup selection and all that kind of stuff that we bang our heads against the wall, that game showed, sometimes it's not the coach, sometimes it's the players, and we love them, but they failed to capitalize on a lot of really good,
Yeah.
clean opportunities. But 3 points is 3 points.
Right. And so you take the 3 points because you're at home. You missed chances. Luckily, you didn't really give up anything much to El Salvador. You go to Hamilton, Ontario, in the very frozen tundra of Hamilton. You get beat 2-0. Now, this loss I put on the players.
Mm.
The first goal we give up was a multitude of errors made by players. I don't blame Berhalter necessarily for any of those mistakes that led to that first goal, except maybe you can say, why did you start Miles when he's out of season? He started Walker Zimmerman the match before, and Walker was out of season. Like it's such a nitpicky thing. Canada was playing players who were out of season. Yeah. That first goal was very much on the players. I'm sorry, it was
100%.
And
100%.
And I know we lambasted Berhalter for trying to pump sunshine after that loss because I don't think I understand what he was trying to say, but you can't say we dominated a game in which you lose 2-0. You just can't.
Mm-hmm. I think a lot of people took that out of context and just failed to understand. Look, there's coach talk, and you're not going to try to throw your players under the bus and ruin their ego, and rake them across the coals. What good does that do? So he's saying, let me take the positives because we had possession and there were some decent things. It just didn't go our way. And I think it was more just trying to save face. And I understand it. I mean, sometimes you got to protect the players. You see it in baseball all the time, right? A manager comes out and gets himself thrown out. Bobby Cox, Brian Snitker with the Braves.
Yeah.
They're known for that, right? Like, let me go take the pressure off my player.
Yeah.
I'm gonna get myself thrown out of this game when I don't necessarily need to, but they're taking up and they're standing up for their players, and I think that's kind of what Berhalter was doing.
Yeah, no, I definitely think
he got killed.
Yeah,
he got killed for it, but I think he's got tough skin. I don't think he cares.
Yeah. I do think, though, that there needs to be a dose of reality when you're talking about that, too, even when you were talking to the players, because I know what he was trying to do is make sure that they weren't discouraged going the next game against Honduras because they needed to win it. Totally understand that. But I'm hoping that the conversation with the players was we did not take advantage of the opportunities we had. We did not create enough opportunities good opportunities to take advantage of them. I think there's a lot of unfortunate luck with how Canada scored their first goal because it was a bad decision on a goal kick. It was a bad play on a goal kick. It was in a bad defensive recovery by multiple players, and then ultimately a defensive mishap by Miles. And then Matt Turner not being, the elite shot stopper that he is for like half a second. So a lot of things, but the problem was it was a domino effect where once one domino fell, everything else fell down. I don't want to talk about their second goal. I do not care about their second goal because pointless. Whatever. I get it. They scored 2. Great. Good for them. Congratulations, Canada. You can freaking, I don't know, pretend like you matter for a day. I don't know. But that game was frustrating, and I do put it on the players because we didn't create enough. I don't think Berhalter necessarily could have made too many changes to somehow make that game go better. I still will say that he should not start Gyasi Zardes, and I'm hoping he learned that, because both of our losses during qualification came with Gyasi Zardes starting a striker, and in both games we were unable to create any real meaningful chances in the box. But even in this Canada game, combining two countries, even in this Canada game, we had Christian Pulisic had guys that 1v1 in the box and didn't make an opportunity. We had Weston McKennie's header that was saved miraculously by Borjan. We had times where we could have taken advantage of it. Caleb is shaking his head.
I'm replaying it in my head. That miss. It would have changed the entire game.
It's not even that Borjan saved it, right? Like, because he got a hand on it. He somehow still kept, like, it was, I swear it was in the net. Yeah. I know it wasn't, but like.
Yeah. I just, when Wes went up, I was like, oh, this is a goal. And like, I'm already like half celebrating, and then that happens, and it's save of his life. You know, good for you, dude. Like, at the end of the day, whatever, no one cares anymore. Like, we're qualified, but the game would have been completely different. Talking about Zardes real quick, I think Zardes may have legited himself or will trapped himself.
We'll go with legited. We'll go with legited, because both Legit and Zardes were actually decent players for the U.S. Will Trapp was not.
This is true. This is true. Yes, there you go. Well, he's legited himself. I think he may have played himself out.
He ran out of utility. That's my thought process on them.
He's not even he's barely playing for club. Yeah. I don't think Greg can even justify calling him in anymore. But I think he served his purpose. And again, I'm not a Zardes hater. I think every player that's on the national team is there. They're 10 times better than I am. Every player's there for a reason. He served his purpose, and
Zardes served his purpose for a long time in the U.S. national team, to be quite honest.
He had his opportunity, and I think we've seen the last of him. I say that.
We'll talk about that at the end of this podcast. But yeah, I kind of agree with you.
Yeah, I think he's out, and
especially as Jesus Ferreira actually starts playing well, it's hard to argue Zardes in that regard. But we'll talk about that at the end of the podcast. But yeah. But then we come home and we get a 3-0 win against Honduras in St. Paul. I have nothing to say about this game other than.
Was that a cold game?
Yeah, it was. I think it was. That's all I have to say about this game. U.S. Soccer, do not ever do that again.
Don't. Matt Turner, he got frostbite from that, Bart. Oh my God, dude.
We won. We got 3 goals off of set pieces because no one was going to be able to score an actual goal in that freaking game regularly.
What a disaster, man! That game,
man.
And we talked about it. We talked about it on the pod. I talked about it on Twitter. Like, people were so so afraid. Like, I'm not even afraid of the cold. I just was so upset.
It's so dumb.
It was so unnecessary. We're talking about the worst team in the qualification process, and we played them with a gimmick for no reason. Could you imagine if we had played that game in Orlando? We'd have beaten
if we had played that game in Philadelphia.
Yeah.
We
anywhere. Whatever. We've already spent too much time talking about it. It's so dumb.
I'm gonna put U.S. Soccer on blast one more time because I need to. You have a whole ass technical director of the organization, a general manager of the U.S. men's side of this, and a head coach who all said, "Send it." Like, y'all thought this was a good idea, and then you won, so you feel justified because you beat a crap team. But turf is bad. By the way.
I talked about the only credit I can give them is the fact that when they scheduled everything, there's no way they could have known that it was going to be that cold.
Yeah, there's no way they could have known it was going to be in single digits. It was still going to be below freezing.
The average temperatures were in like the 20s. So it's, the fact that it was that extreme, okay. But like 1 week out, 2 weeks out, once you're starting to see the forecasts and it's like, okay, this is going to be ridiculous. Why not move it? You could have moved it.
You could have just not scheduled that particular. You could have not scheduled that particular game there.
I will say, and we talked about this before, man, the fans.
Yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely.
That's the win. That they get the win.
Yeah.
The 3 points was
absolutely.
Totally. I wish I could high five every single one of those fans. I wish I could have been there, to be honest with you. Can you imagine? Like,
no, I would not have wanted to be there.
Oh, I see. I'm born.
I have spent.
I hate hot weather. I just got back from a week at the beach. I hate the beach. I do. Put me in the mountains. Give me a cabin. Give me snow. I love it. I'm happy.
I mean, that all sounds great because I'm inside where there's heat. Moving on to March. Actually, hold on. We get 6 points from this window. Again, we don't hit a formula we have to hit. Mm-hmm. So we go into March where we are in a qualification position. We were second place, right? Mm-hmm. Yes, we had to do work in March, but at this point, no one had guaranteed their spot. No one. Mm. So the fact that people were freaking out ahead of time was a little premature because I was like, yeah, people were making false equivalencies of like, oh, well, going into Trinidad, we had this amount of time, but this percentage to qualify and we've screwed it up. But like going into this last window, we had this much. And you think I'm like, one, you're not equating the correct statistics here. Two, everyone has a chance to screw this up. Everyone Canada could have conceivably fallen out of a qualification spot completely within that window. And we go into El Azteca and get a 0-0 draw playing. I know the possession stats don't back it up, but we took it to Mexico for most of that game until they had to absolutely throw everything to try to score against us.
Yeah, I mean, again, we play well with teams that want to play soccer. It'll always benefit us.
Wait, are you saying that Canada doesn't try to play soccer? Is that what you're trying to say?
Listen, what I'm saying is all credit to Canada. I'm super happy for them. They're in the World Cup. That's fantastic. That's better for CONCACAF. But do they play beautiful soccer? No. Now, I am also a more pragmatic type person. Loved the Man City-Liverpool game this weekend because it wasn't just gorgeous, beautiful soccer, like whatever. No, they played so direct at times because why not? If they're going to sit there and have such a high line, play the ball in behind. It's pointless to sit there and pass back and forth between your center backs. It's so frustrating. Sometimes it calls for playing direct. The game dictates it. So play with what the opponent is giving you. And Canada did that. I mean,
we did that at times against Mexico.
Ugly. We did. But anytime, and I don't care what team you're playing, anytime that a team is going to play and the teams are fairly equal, it's going to be a better game because there's more space to work with. It is so difficult to break down a low block. It's so difficult. But when you're not and you're coming out and you're pressing and we can beat that press and we can work around it, there's space to be had, which means there's opportunities to be had. And we played well. God, it would have been so good. It would have been so cool to get that win. I mean, never before, right? Never before. And to be the youngest team to go down there and do it. Now, I think the atmosphere helped a little bit. I mean, it was what?
Yeah, it was a half full
they say,
stadium.
Half full, whatever.
Yeah, which is still like 40,000 people.
They said that it was still extremely loud. I'm sure the atmosphere was awesome. But it was there.
Yeah, it was. We had multiple chances. Yeah. But, hey, those are the games where you're like, you know what? We'll take a 0-0 draw. It's like 100%. You go to Mexico, you get a draw. You're not complaining. Especially when you follow it up with a 5-1 win against Panama at home. And I'm just saying that, again, that match, being in the stands after like the third goal, it was just a party because like after 3 goals, it wasn't like it was basically a shirt. There was like this isn't like come on, and then we got the 5th goal, and I was like, oh yeah, this is absolutely happening, because we all knew the math, that was the why people were freaking out before the window. I was going, there's a very direct path to qualification, and we did it in the first 2 games. And basically set us up for success in the 3rd game by not having to absolutely blow it. And we didn't. We lost 2-0 to Costa Rica. I still think that their 2 goals were weird and not flukes, but it was like it was the only 2 opportunities they really had all game. I think we should have scored at least a goal in the first half, but Keylor Navas is a god and still to me probably the best player that CONCACAF has ever produced when you look at his career in its entirety.
Can you imagine had we gone through this cycle with Keylor Navas as our keeper?
Well, we wouldn't have lost to Canada.
No.
Or tied them maybe at home. It's probably a better way. We probably wouldn't have tied them at home. But I actually don't know if it would have made that big of a difference because I think our defense was really good.
Our defense was great. I think we were the best team, right?
Yeah. We Canada had us bested us because of the last match day. But anyway, I think there were 1 or 2 matches that would have gone in our favor. For sure.
Absolutely. And it even just the confidence that you have going into matches. He's that good.
He's fantastic.
But yeah, like you talked about earlier, it was a weird match. The mentality and the guys talked about it on the post game show with Paramount Plus, which by the way, I love those guys.
Paramount Plus has killed it. With their
just the fact that you got Clint Dempsey off his fishing boat and got him with some headphones on, like I love.
Yeah,
I mean, favorite player of all time. So just to see him and get to hear him, like I love it. But they talked about it. It's a weird mentality, and I get it. Like my boys, my 2012s, we played on Sunday. We played the 2011s. And we played 9v9 versus our normal 7v7, which is what the 9-year-olds, 10-year-olds play. It's a weird mentality. It's still soccer, right? But we went out there and we lost 7-0. The team wasn't that much better than us, but that team is used to playing 9v9.
Right.
And our boys aren't. And it was like, you've got them out there. They're running around. They look like, what am I doing? It was just a different mentality, and sometimes it changes things. And I think it was a weird game, weird circumstances. Like, hey, all you have to do is not lose by 5. What? Like,
yeah.
So
and to Costa Rica, like they were going to somehow magically score 5-6 goals in a game. They hadn't done that.
Listen, I will say, like. When they scored that first one, I was like, okay, whatever. Then they scored the second.
No. You're not.
Yeah. Jesus, please.
Yeah.
Please don't.
At that point, I was like, wait a second, guys. Wait a second. Especially because it was in such quick succession. Like, if it was like they scored the first goal and then like 20 minutes go by, they score a second. I'm like, all right, they're fine.
I was like, no way this is happening. God. But, like I said, it's a weird one. It's a weird one. But, we put ourselves in that situation.
I think the fact that we played those guys played both of the matches before that. They were tired. Pulisic started all 3 of the matches. I understood what Berhalter was doing. I kind of disagreed with it, not in like a hard disagree, but I was like, I would have just gone with a fresh squad so they could have run for 60 minutes and be like, y'all, your job is to continue to put pressure on Costa Rica because we know that Costa Rica is not an offensively what's the word? They're not usually playing on the front foot. They're a very good offensive team when they get in transition, going from a low block, breaking out, but they're not a team that's going to necessarily create offensive opportunities through possession.
Well, I think it was the biggest thing was they rotated based on necessity, right? Because they're thinking there's no chance we're going to, score 5-6 goals. So they were kind of looking ahead. Let's get out of here, move on to the playoff, and trying to keep guys from, what do they have, like 6 players, 6 normal starters sitting on a yellow.
Yeah.
So they were worried about that. So they rotated heavily. They had a lot of young kids with a lot of things to prove, and they did what they did.
They absolutely had more to play for than we did. That's just what it comes down
100%,
to.
100%, and that's what we saw.
It's I just played in the Soccer in the Streets tournament for the ATL Nations Cup this past weekend, and I'm not equating this at all because obviously this is charity soccer, but like you get to a point as an athlete where you're like over the age of 30 and you're like, it's not worth it that much. You're not playing for like I'm paying to be here. There's the mentality of like this is not the most important thing right now. So I know a lot of those guys were. I'm not saying they weren't trying to win. That's not the point. But you could tell that, especially that second half, the mentality was a little less sharp, and that's fine. Whatever. You ended the window with 4 points. You ended up with a goal differential good enough to qualify you. That's all that matters.
That's it.
So we qualified. And that overall is the only point at this juncture that matters. But there are other points that we need to make. So overall, looking at this team in qualification, how do you feel about it? I mean, how would you summarize this team right now after you've looked at them through 14 matches of this qualification cycle?
I mean, it's one of those where you look and you think, yeah, the U.S. should always qualify, but it was an uphill battle, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you look at all the context that we've laid out over this entire podcast. It was an uphill battle, and the guys got it done. I think they're a resilient group. We've had to deal with a ton of injuries, not just to just a random player 1, player 2. Like, no. Our best players, our energy leaders, our captain type players, massive injuries. And we found a way for next guy up and get the job done. So I think resiliency is a really good word to use.
That's a good word for this team because I do think that we created a lot of our uphill battles. I think that was the issue is that a lot of our problems were a little self-induced. And we'll come up to this when we talk about Berhalter, but I don't think Berhalter set his team up for ultimate success with a lot of his rosters, not even lineups, just the rosters he built. And I don't think that this team took advantage of the advantages they had. I think that's the best way I can describe this team right now is they have a lot of competitive advantages. We have a lot of talent in a lot of areas of the field. And I just haven't seen us fully utilize those competitive advantages. And I don't think we did that at all during qualification. We have, in my opinion, the deepest pool of players to pick from. And it just seemed like we never really tapped into that as much. We had, even within the window, the deepest rosters that we could have had, and we never really tapped into it that much. And I still think we have the most quality team when you look at individual players of CONCACAF. And I never thought that we really saw the team play like a quality team. It was a team of very good players. That's how I would summarize it. It's a team that's not really using its advantages yet. And maybe that's because as a team, as a collective, coach, players, staff, don't know how to get the best out of their team yet, which is a little scary considering that Berhalter has had a lot of time with these guys and a lot of time to evaluate these guys.
Well, I think we talked about the Costa Rica match going into that game, and it was a weird mentality, right? And you saw that in the performance. I think overall, if you look at the World Cup qualifying process, this whole cycle, what was the mentality? Just don't fail.
Right.
So going into the whole thing, it's kind of a weird mentality, right?
Yeah.
Like the Costa Rica game, don't lose by 5. That's what we went into, and we didn't lose by 5. It wasn't great, but we did what we were supposed to do. So you went into the qualification process not dominating the entire thing. No, just don't fail.
Yeah, just qualify. That was the only goal.
Yeah. And so I think that kind of presented itself the entire process. So I just think the fact that monkey's off our back, right? All that weight is off the federation's shoulders, coaches' shoulders, players' shoulders. I think we can finally play with some freedom now. And that's why I'm so excited, because it's almost house money now. You did what you
Yeah.
were supposed to do. You're the youngest team in the entire tournament. There's not a ton of expectation for you. You go in there, you gain so much experience, but you don't have any weight on those shoulders anymore because there's not that expectation that's holding you down. Does that make sense?
It does, but I have a fear that Berhalter will approach the World Cup in the similar way that he oftentimes talked about these windows, in the sense that he would say, well, I see the games playing out like this. And so he would bring players that he felt would make certain games go the way he wanted them to. And as we learned just about every window, and this is a knock that I have on Berhalter, is no point did the games go the way we thought they would. At no point.
Yeah.
So what we need to do is figure out who our best group of 23 players are, 26, whatever it ends up being, and figure out what that best lineup is and what the best, as Berhalter calls them, solutions are in game.
Sure.
Because I would rather have a malleable plan of, okay, these guys I know are my best players and they know how to play well with each other, that we can apply to every game and can then manipulate as we need to, rather than, well, I got to have this player because I think he'll be good against this type of player of opponent. And I just don't believe that's a great way to look at a World Cup. And I feel like he did that a lot in this qualification cycle, specifically talking about guys like John Brooks or Gyasi Zardes on the other end, where he would leave John Brooks out because he said, oh, I just don't see him fitting into the way these games are going to play out. But he would bring Gyasi Zardes in because he thought that's how the games would play out. Like, that doesn't make sense to me. You're bringing in a guy who clearly is not as good a quality because you think that a slight thing that he does kind of better than most people is going to be beneficial, but you leave off a guy because one thing he does poorly is not worth calling in. And so that's my concern now with Berhalter, and that's my this will play into my evaluation of him. But like,
I'm with you. I think his biggest flaw is player evaluation, roster selection, and lineup choices.
Yeah.
But again, we'll talk about that later.
Yeah, we've talked a lot about Berhalter, so let's talk more about the team as a whole and these players. We agreed the best performance this team had was the Mexico 2-0 win at home.
Sure, it's got to be.
Okay.
It's got to be. Just, I mean, results play a part of performance, right? It's the ultimate,
Yeah.
What's the word? Measurement of what a performance is, and I think because it was Mexico, because it was Dos Acero, because it was so vital into what we were trying to do, I don't see how any other game. There's some good games. It's got to be the best one for me.
I think my second would be the Mexico away game. I think when you look at the performance, the way the team played, that was a great, yeah. Because then you look at like the Panama game, and I don't think the team played particularly well. We scored a lot of goals, but I don't think we played a 5-1 win. But we played great.
A lot of times the opponent dictates
Absolutely.
whether a game's going to be pretty or not. And, a lot of times when teams are going to sit in the low block, or if they are trying to play and they're not very good and it's just scrappy and ugly, it's just an ugly game. And it is what it is. Mexico's a good quality team.
Yeah.
And we match up well. The mentality of the players is always there. We're always up for it. And I'm just excited because I think Mexico US for the next 5, 6, 10 years is going to be so much better than it always has been.
I hope so. Worst game performance we had, is it Panama away?
Yeah, I think we kind of alluded to that earlier. We were both pretty harsh on it. Like I said earlier, looking back, I think given the opportunity, everybody would rather have that game back to redo than any other game. There's several games I'd like a do-over, right?
Yeah.
Jamaica.
I agree. I want to talk more about the Jamaica game real quick, because I thought about that when I was thinking what could be a word. It was such a weird performance. Maybe not the worst performance. It was such a weird performance.
Weird, yes. And I think the mentality plays a part of that, right? That's the weirdness. But as far as worst, you got top to bottom, lineup choices, tactical, game on the field.
Player performances. Yeah, like everything was bad.
Everything was terrible.
Yeah.
So hands down for me.
Who do you think the best player was during qualification?
This is a tough one, right? This is a tough one because you had so many injuries. Like, to me, Weston McKennie, had he stayed healthy, it'd have been hands down, unanimous,
Right.
undisputed answer. But he didn't stay healthy the whole time. And, health, I hate to make that a part of how a player plays and form or whatever, but health is a big part of it. And to me, from a guy who gave Anthony Robinson a ton of crap earlier on, to me, it's A-Rob. The dude was an absolute robot. He was a monster. He played, I'd like to look at it. I feel like he probably played all but like 180 minutes of the entire.
Oh my goodness! If I had been prepared for that, I would have looked that up because I'm with you. Like the first window was the only window I think he didn't play every single minute. Like, yeah, I mean, he didn't play. He came on against Honduras. Right. The Panama game in October, he didn't play. But like other than that, it was him.
I'm telling you, the kid is an absolute monster. You love his heart. You heard Berhalter talk about the fact that there's guys who are glue guys, right? He said Christian Roldan's a glue guy, which is great. That's fine. And then he said Anthony
Is it
Robinson. Fine? Whatever. And it's fine because I have no control over it. So it's fine, whatever. But he said Anthony Robinson. And I just think what he gives you on the field, like, that kid doesn't stop. He gives you every ounce of energy that he has. It doesn't matter if it goes into extra time. It could be the 120th minute, and Anthony Robinson is going to give you a full field sprint. Like, I don't understand it. And it could be the third match in the window. So for me, with he had some key plays, he had some key goals, he had some key defensive stops, and then on
2 goals and 3 assists.
He was so consistent.
Yeah.
To me, it's hard to go. I mean, there's a few other players that are worthy of mention, but it's Anthony Robinson for me.
So you said that you thought he played all but 180 minutes. He played all but 198 minutes.
Oh my God. See? I mean, what is he made of?
I don't know.
Flesh.
Like, that's Captain America right there. That's some, whatever
muscle and bone. He's got, like, let's look. He's got some sort of like cyborg freaking, like, I don't understand it, man. I can't imagine.
1,062 minutes out of 3 games or 13 games. He didn't play a full 1 game.
Listen, I play co-ed soccer on a Saturday night, 35-minute halves. I don't even play the whole game. And then I turn around and I play Sunday night 7v7 men's. And again, I don't even play the whole game. And I'm dead. I'm dead.
You're like ibuprofen for like breakfast, lunch, dinner, everything.
Dude, this kid is sitting here and he's playing full 90. Professional, international,
and somehow like created a baby in this entire process too. Like, what? He's a new father. Like, what is he doing? How is he doing this as a new father? Where is his energy coming from?
He's not human, man. We need to check his DNA.
How?
He's not human. I'm glad he's American, but he's not human.
Yes. The only other shout I'll give is Timothy Weah, but I think he might be. Absolutely. I'm going to go with another category because I think this is where this person fits in. The most surprisingly good player in qualifying for me is Walker Zimmerman.
100%. So he was one of my honorable mentions, right? Like, worthy of a shout. The dude, like, no one expected him to be where he's at. No. He has all but put his name in stone to be on the plane to Qatar. And no one would have seen that. Let's go back. Let's go back. Pre-qualification window, like the first window was what, September? Go back.
He got called in September, was the only guy on the roster who didn't play.
And he didn't play. Would anybody have said right now, April 2022, Walker Zimmerman, first center back on the board?
Mm-mm.
Nobody.
No, because at this point, we had John Brooks and everyone else. And then October comes.
Mm-hmm.
after a bad window by John Brooks, but he still gets called in for October. But then he gets hurt, and Walker Zimmerman replaces him. And from there, it's almost history. I mean, I feel very confident with our center back trio right now. I think we have 3 center backs who we can rotate in, and I'm perfectly fine. But like Walker Zimmerman absolutely has become the most reliable center back in the USMNT pool.
You can't leave him out. And not only has he become reliable, like as far as his play on the field, he's become a leader.
Yes.
And a vital, important leader, because we're talking about a 28-year-old becoming the most senior member of our daggone roster.
I'm very fine with Tyler Adams being our captain. I'm okay with Pulisic.
Tyler Adams
I'm okay with Pulisic being captain on occasion.
Yeah.
But I kind of think that Walker Zimmerman has a big case to be captain. Maybe vice captain, right? If it's Tyler Adams as your dude, I'm fine with that, right? Because I think at the national team level, honestly, I think you need to have the guy who is the leader so that everyone's like, oh, yeah, Tyler's here. But because you have so many flexible and fluctuating rosters, I know it's hard to pick one. But like, I'd like Walker's clearly demanded respect and kind of in the older brother mode where you're like, oh, yeah, he's cool, but he's not like exactly my best friend, but like I look up to him at the same time. You know what I'm saying?
Well, I think
he's definitely big brother vibes.
I think it goes beyond just performance on the field. Like, is he the best player on the roster? No, not at all. But he does well enough. He is solid. So you couple that with what he gives you in training, his leadership, just qualities in general, as far as his character and his personality, and then his energy.
Yeah,
it all leads to being a leader, right, on the team. So yeah, I'm with you. I think not only was he just so surprising as far as his performances go, as far as what he gives the team, and we talked about his aerial quality. Like the dude doesn't lose a 50-50 ball in the air. Like, doesn't. It's just not going to happen. But then he starts to give you those intangibles as well. I think he's one of those guys where at this point, there's no chance you leave him off the World Cup roster.
I'm with you. I think he's center back number 1. And I also think that, again, I think there are 3 guys who are going to Qatar. Everyone else is playing for center back number 4 on this roster. Any other players you want to mention from this campaign that really stood out in a positive way, who need recognition?
I think, you can't ever look past Christian Pulisic. I mean, I feel like we watched in this whole cycle, we watched the Christian Pulisic roller coaster, right? Up and down, up and down, up and down. It was weird. He admitted he was putting too much pressure on himself. He obviously did have more pressure than pretty much anybody else. But he still came up big in a lot of moments. He had some fantastic games. He had some stinkers. He had some poor performances. But overall, he's one of our best players for a reason, and he showed it. So I think, you gotta tip your cap. But I don't think we've seen the best of Pulisic in a U.S. men's national team jersey, which is saying a lot because he's had some incredible moments. I'm really looking forward to this World Cup in Qatar because I think he's going to show out.
Yeah, I think he's the guy when you talked about weight being lifted off their shoulder and being able to be more free. I think he fits into that. We talked about McKennie, unfortunately, not being able to play in March and being dismissed from the team in September. I still think he might be the most important player we could put on the field. It's very hard to reduce him.
100%.
Is there anyone? I don't want to go too negative because we will have an entire episode evaluating the players and the pool as a whole. But who absolutely played themselves off of a World Cup roster? And that might be a little bit too extreme, but whose time with the World?
You got a couple guys,
okay,
right? We talked about Leggett. We even used his name as a verb for Zardes.
Yeah.
Sebastian Lletget, he got called into a couple windows and then just didn't even play.
Yeah.
Zardes stopped playing for club. There's just no justification to bring him in. Even when he was in, wasn't great. I hate saying like, oh, this was the worst player, but there wasn't a ton there. So I think those are the two guys you have to look at. Is it saying that they're done and they're not going to be in Qatar? I don't know. Like they could have.
I don't think we can make that officially, but I don't see a path where Gyasi Zardes at 30 years old in MLS, who's even still not playing consistently for Columbus, can overtake a guy like I'm specifically looking at Jesus Ferreira, right? Because Ferreira is in my opinion, the type of striker that Berhalter wants most in his system. And I think Zardes fit that for a lot of this time. He was like, well, he knows the system best. He works in the system best. I don't know how he overtakes Ferreira. Even a guy like Sargent and Pepe, who aren't scoring a whole lot, you'd have to think. You just have to think that between now and next November, the two of them are going to figure something out, Well,
you got to think Sargent's going to be in the championship.
I mean,
right?
Norwich might be in the second Bundesliga.
In the second Bundesliga, exactly. Plus more time with their club.
Right.
So, yeah, like I said, unless Lletget and Zardes just absolutely catch fire, I believe they played themselves out. And that's okay.
Yeah.
It's okay. It happens. It's not a bash on either one of them. They've served their purpose. They have given everything they've had to the country, to the U.S. men's national team, and I appreciate everything they've done. But sometimes it's time for a change, and sometimes players overtake you, and sometimes you play yourself out. And I think there's been a combination of both of those things.
Lletget and Zardes are definitely two guys who missed their opportunity. I missed the opportunity for them to go to the World Cup because we missed out on 2018.
And so yes, 100%.
And that's just unfortunately how it goes. They hit their ceilings as professionals between the 2014 and this World Cup, right? 2018 was supposed to be their ceiling as a professional. Lletget maybe you could argue that he kind of hit his ceiling a little bit. Like that was going to be the pinnacle of their professional career, and they just don't have the ceiling that other guys have, in my opinion.
Yep.
All right. Let's talk about Berhalter. Oh, wait. The grade of the team overall. What's your overall team grade? Sorry.
Okay, so, they passed. They qualified. So initially kind of thought, maybe A-. But then I start thinking, they did the job, yes. Was it perfect? No. So A+ is out. But I don't know if I can give them an A simply because of what we talked about, right? Berhalter has his fair share of blame for some of the misfires, if you will. But there were several moments, we talked about the El Salvador game, where there were opportunities created and the players didn't capitalize. There were moments where defensively, we fell short of what we are capable of, fell asleep on set pieces, etc. So I have to knock the players a little bit. So given the fact that we qualified with an extremely difficult situation as far as youth and like all the context we talked about, I'm going to say B+.
Okay. I'm going to go B- because I still think there were several performances in which the players should have done better. We can blame Berhalter a lot, and there's a lot of blame for Berhalter, but I look at that Panama match, and I still think that is and I know you said it, games aren't played on paper, but on paper, the 11 guys who were put out there to start that game were phenomenally better than what Panama put out there. Our guys didn't perform. I think that when you look at the Canada match, there were blame Berhalter for some things, but the guys there also struggled to finish. They struggled to create opportunities, and defensively, they let up an error, and it happens. I mean, I think overall the players did enough to qualify, but it wasn't a great showing at any, we had 2 really good games in qualifying, maybe 3 out of 14.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. And my point that I keep going back to is at no point we never really were on the formula, right? The equation was never really being met. We had 2 windows where we met the formula. One, we tied at home and won on the road. So to me, that's more of a missed opportunity than we hit the formula. And the other one was a 2-match window. So I give them a B-. I think it was okay, fine, you did it, great. Yeah.
The only part was with the Panama game. The players performed poorly, but it's also another thing to be put in a position and to be put in
then you have the Canada game where they all just played poorly. So
exactly,
I don't want to say they played poorly, but they themselves are the ones who let us down that Canada game.
Wasn't good at all. Exactly. I just think there's some times where you're put in a situation and you're just, regardless of how good you are, you're not going to be very good.
Yeah.
And I think the Panama game, not only did he change the roster, but he put him in a double pivot with Acosta.
Yeah.
As
in Honduras too, where he had the weird Honduras was that Acosta Sands midfield and a double pivot.
Yeah, that's the one.
It was terrible the first half. So that goes on Berhalter. Did the players play 100%. Well? Absolutely not. But that is on Berhalter.
Yeah.
So it's hard to dissect that sometimes, but I think that there were a lot of performances where I felt like the players could have been better. I think a lot of the goal scoring problems we can talk about Berhalter, but the XG does say that we were really, I can talk about.
I think that points to the fact that we don't have a bona fide striker.
Right
now. Like most teams do. Even bad teams, they might struggle in certain areas, but what do they have? They still have a 9. We don't. You look at our team and it's I got that guy. I feel confident here. You start filling out that lineup sheet and all of a sudden you get to number 9. And you're like, oh, what do I put here?
Yeah.
Let me try this guy. We're still having tryouts for one of the most important positions on the field. And like you said, we're creating those opportunities, but we don't have anybody who's consistently putting those in. And we got a guy who in the Swiss League is lighting it on fire. And then we give him an opportunity. And we put Gio Reyna puts a ball on a daggum platter. My God, I could have scored it. I'm not sure. I'm not a good finisher. I'm a defensive player. I'm a right back and a defensive mid, but still, it was ridiculous.
Yeah,
for a guy of his quality and doing what he's doing in the Swiss League, which is incredible. To have that opportunity and he still doesn't put that in. That was that was the summary of us
as a
U.S. national team. Our whole this is what we have.
Yep.
This is what we're doing.
Yeah.
So,
but I put that. I mean, that's a player issue, right? So again, that's why
it is 100%.
Yeah. So yeah, okay. You give them a B+. I give them a B-. I think we both agree that the players, for the most part, did a pretty decent job. Let's talk about the guy in charge. Let's talk about Greg Berhalter. This was his first qualification campaign as a coach, but he has been in charge since 2019, and he had a lot of time. And I get that COVID wrecked a lot of things, but he's had a lot of time to look at and evaluate players for both club and country. He's had a lot of time to implement his system because even during COVID, there are ways to, still teach guys. We know he loves himself a PowerPoint. So I want to start with the positives because I think everyone wants to talk about the negatives.
Sure.
I want to talk about positives. And I think the biggest positive from this entire qualification window was defensive. Our defending was good. Very rarely had a bad defensive performance. The only one that was bad was the performance away to Canada. And that was I don't want to say understandable, but
it wasn't 90 minutes of bad. It was
no,
like
it was
30 seconds of bad.
And it was bad in other, but it was just like, okay, fine. Like we look bad against a very good team, a team playing very well against two legitimate strikers. Jonathan David and Kyle Laren are very good strikers. I mean, legitimate bona fide strikers for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Defensively, this team was very good. And
solid.
Yeah, I think that is something that you absolutely can say. And that is not just a CONCACAF thing, because CONCACAF has some teams who like to attack. But you look at like the way we defended against Mexico, it's good. And I don't think Canada did anything to really create. I think even in that Canada game, we did a better job for the most part dealing with their transitions, except for the one time where we were completely done. So I think defensively, this team was pretty decent. Actually, no, I think this team was good defensively. I need to say that again. This team was good defensively.
Well, I mean, if you look at the overall statistics and their performances, and I think it's hard to argue against that. I think we were very good. I think we were a good team. It's just, again, it's a difficult task. So if I'm going to give my grade for Berhalter, I'm probably going to go with a C+, because he got the job done. There were some bright moments. I've got to give him some credit for both of the Mexico matches. It counts for something, and those held a lot of weight, right? But I feel like there were so many missed opportunities to bring in new blood and give opportunities to players that deserved opportunities, yet he went with a retread. Like, we know what we have from them. And maybe that's why he did it, right? I know what I got. I know I can at least trust it. But it's like, but you could be sitting on a gold mine here. Like, it took an injury to find out what Tim Weah gives you. Why are we waiting on those negative moments to give a player opportunity? I mean, there's so many guys that I look at that I think, man, this kid could have really helped us. Joe Scally, Conrad De La Fuente. It took Luca De La Torre forever to get an opportunity.
Forever. And even that felt like...
And look what he's done. He's pretty much, in about a 2-window period.
The weirdest damn thing... I need to talk about Luca De La Torre, because the weirdest damn thing. He came on against Jamaica. Mm-hmm. And I get it. We were up 2-0. But, like, he looked really good against Jamaica. Mm-hmm. And he wasn't rewarded with the start against Panama.
I know.
Put frickin' Sebastian Lletget out there.
I know.
Berhalter, man, like...
That's what I'm saying. It is the biggest gripe that we all have, and rightfully so. His personnel management, his player management, whether that's selection, roster, lineup, whatever. It just leaves a lot to be desired. And I understand, as a fan, like, we're not going to get everything we want.
No, but this is the thing.
Like there's way more that we're crying about that isn't just, some fan yelling for, Alex Mendez, which, I hope.
Sure, I'd love to see Alex Mendez.
I'd love to see him. But, there's some fans out there.
It's not even... It's not even, why don't we have Joe Scally when DeAndre Illich? It's not even that. It's, Greg, why did you call up one left back on the roster for this final window? Greg, why did we only have three attacking midfielders? Greg, why did,
right?
That it's those things that it's not.
Well, we talked about
specific players.
We talked about the fact Berhalter clearly is expecting, I've got Anthony Robinson, and then Dest is my left back. But Dest is your starting right back.
Right.
You can't have your backup left back as your starting right back. You can't do that. I have no problem if he wants to call in Anthony Robinson, Serginho Dest, DeAndre Yedlin, and Joe Scally, and have Joe Scally be your backup left back.
Yeah, because then you have two guys who can play left back. We're good.
No problem with that. It can't be, I'm counting on Serginho Dest as my left back.
That's insane. It's an insanely naive move.
And maybe he's thinking, but if, something happens, I've got Bello right there. I can call in, I can always call in players. Maybe he's thinking that. I don't know. But
I
either
hate that
way,
mentality.
I feel like our gripes and our complaints as fans are legitimate. Are there
Because
some are
yes,
there some that are irrational? Sure. And we're not gonna get everything we want as a fan. But I don't think that it's crazy and illogical for some of our arguments to be made. Like when we're screaming and yelling for Chris Richards to have an opportunity, for Luca Della Torre to have an opportunity, for Gianluca Busio to have an opportunity, all these different players, it's like we see the talent. We're watching these dudes every single week.
yep,
Give them an opportunity.
yeah. And I think that would be another frustration I had with Berhalter is there's no cap on your roster size. So if you just call up Joe Scally because you're like, yo, you're an American who's 18 years old playing in the Bundesliga.
At least he's in camp.
Right. Why can't he just at least get a call up to say, hey, bud, we see what you're doing. We acknowledge that you're doing it at a decently high level. But, I don't know if you're ready to play for us yet. Certainly not ready to start. I think that is a very fair assessment of Joe Scally.
Mm-hmm.
But to not bring him into camp is weird. It's very weird from Berhalter.
It's just dumb to me.
Right. Yeah. So I do think that he has some big problems with roster building, roster management. I think that he still holds on to players way too long. I think that he eventually cut dead weight.
Yep.
But he does it when they give him zero option.
Yeah.
And I'd like for him to get to that point a little quicker.
A little quicker. I 100% agree.
I also want to point out, as we said it's maybe not his fault, but the team did struggle to score goals or to capitalize on goal-scoring opportunities, and also to create goal-scoring opportunities at times. We definitely did not look smooth into it going in attack. We had 5 matches in which we were shut out, 5 of 14. We had a 1.5 goal per game average. I think those numbers are a little skewed by the 3 matches of Panama and the Honduras matches, but hey, they count. Mm-hmm. They count.
Right.
It just was frustrating because you looked at the defensive performances and we didn't have the offensive performance to make up for it.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So what's your overall grade?
I'm giving him a C-.
Mm-hmm.
He's the guy in the group project that I definitely go, you didn't do all the work. Yeah, I was like, oh, you didn't do the work that everyone else did. Which is weird because he's the guy who should be doing all the work to get these guys ready. And I just felt like, I also felt like these guys weren't. I go back to the Canada match too, where he somehow seemed surprised that Canada was going to sit back and try to counterattack.
Mm-hmm.
And was like, well, we didn't really expect him to do that. Or like he put players out there who were not going to be able to adequately handle that. It's like, bruh, what are you doing? So I give him a C-. I think it is slightly below average. I think that's the problem I have with him is he's the kids say nowadays, he's mid.
He's mid. Oh.
He's mid.
My daughter says it all the time.
He's mid. And that doesn't mean he's bad. It's just like, it's so frustrating that a lot of the barriers to this team being better, being good, a lot of them track back to Greg Berhalter.
Agree. Completely agree. The Twitter world was lit on fire with the whole, possibility of, does Pep want us? It makes you think. Like,
no, Pep wants to go coach at New York City FC. Let's be real honest here, y'all.
But it does. It makes you think. Like, God,
Pep's never managed a national team before.
Like that caliber of a coach.
Yeah,
it's hard not to dream there. But I think with the players, the player grade, the coach grade, we're pretty close. That C, just kind of average. Just you did the job. It is what it is.
I think that's the thing about Berhalter is like I can't give you lower than a C because you did achieve the goal. necessarily.
He's done some
like,
really good stuff, Bart. Like let's be honest. If you want to, we're talking about the World Cup qualification cycle only at the moment. But if you want to look at the whole,
that's fair to
tenure
talk
of
about.
Greg
Yeah,
Berhalter, it's been a pretty good success. I mean, you look at the record, just U.S. versus Mexico. I mean,
let's not talk
it's
about
hard to
that one in
complain.
2019, but yeah.
Well, yeah, but I mean,
we haven't lost to them in 4 tries.
We have performed very well, if not historically well, against Mexico. Won the Gold Cup, won CONCACAF Nations League,
that thing.
Qualified for a World Cup. I mean, it's hard to say he's bad. So yeah, I'm with you. Like,
yeah,
there are things that are easy to complain about, rightfully so. But then on the other hand, you have to take into consideration the positives. So I think you put those things together, and yeah, you're right there in the middle. It's a C.
It's hard to look past. When you weigh the positives and the negatives, they cancel themselves out too much, and it is hard to think about what the measurement I always go back to is, what if Dave Sarachan were still the coach? Would this team have been better or worse? And I don't have an answer. And I think that's and I actually kind of like Dave Sarachan as a coach. I was a Chicago Fire fan before Atlanta United started, and Sarachan was a coach for a good many of those years and put them in the playoffs consistently. But I don't think he's a better coach than Berhalter. But
We'll say this though: would we have Yunus Musa? Would we have?
So these are questions that I love, because Berhalter's done a great job recruiting, guys. You bring up a great point.
Job. He's done a great job. And if we get Balogun,
yeah,
we'll see.
I think for this qualification process, Greg was for me a C- for you a C+. Like, it's average at best.
He gets a C.
He needs to do better. He needs to do better. He can't get out-coached the way he did in multiple games in qualifying, because he got out-coached in game. I think Greg does a great job of getting teams ready to play a game that he wants to play. He got out-coached several times in this, specifically to John Herdman. So, all right. Last 2 things we're going to talk about real quick. We had 2 draws since the last time we talked. We had the World Cup draw. The United States is in Group B with England, Iran, and one of Wales, Scotland, and Ukraine. I feel very confident about this draw because I think we can beat all of these teams. I'm not saying it's going to be easy, but this is the damn World Cup. But if you wanted an easy game, we'll play more CONCACAF Nations League games,
Sure.
But I think we can beat all of these teams.
I mean, absolutely. Like we've talked about, we match up better against teams that want to play soccer. England's going to want to play soccer. I mean, they're incredible.
Yeah.
That suits us.
Iran, I think to an extent, Iran too. I mean, they're a defensive team, but
they're an older team. They're an experienced team.
Yeah.
They've got some quality. I don't know a ton about them, but they're definitely beatable. I'm not scared to death of them.
Yeah.
And then, Wales, Scotland, Ukraine. If it's Ukraine, they're going to have the entire world behind them. Rightfully so, sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
Wales, you got to deal with Gareth Bale. I mean, and we see what he can do during their playoff game. I mean, my God.
Wales is at the end of their golden generation.
They are.
And I don't mean that in a bad way, but it's just like Ramsey and Bale are getting older. A lot of their guys are older. So, and they're kind of a defense first team as well. As they play good defense and then hope that Bale, Ramsey,
they're super beatable.
Yeah.
If I could have any 3, I'd want Scotland.
Oh, same.
They're going to play. They're going to play hard. They're a solid group, but yeah, bring on Scotland.
Yeah, they've got 27 left backs, so I'll take Scotland. All right, so we had that draw. We're in Group B. For CONCACAF Nations League, we do have to play these games in June. We got El Salvador and Grenada.
Yep.
Look, y'all, we have to play these games. I hate that.
Does Grenada have a soccer team?
They do. They're called the Spice Boys.
Oh, God.
hate that we have to play these games before World
Yeah.
Cup, but we also
Yeah.
like this is just the fact of the matter of COVID has wrecked a lot of things.
Right.
I don't have look, we get to play El Salvador again. That's at least a decent test, an okay test. They gave us hell during qualifying.
Mm-hmm. I want to see as many opportunities given as the ability to do so presents itself, I guess. Like,
yeah.
I don't want to just,
Greg said this would be
oh,
the strongest squad, but I think that you can bring in, because this isn't like one big window. So like, why not bring 30 guys and be like, okay, yeah,
exactly. That's my thing. Like, as the ability presents itself, right? Like, do I want to just try out? Like, oh, let's throw Paxton Aronson in there. I think Paxton Aronson's gonna be a great player. Let's not. We're not going.
Paxton Pomacall. I don't want to necessarily just throw him in, but like, yeah.
Eric Williamson, who has had success with the U.S. men's national team already, let's get him back in there.
Yeah.
Josh Sargent, let's get him back in there. There are players who have shown the ability before. They have shown with club that they can do it. Let's give them an opportunity, especially for some spots where we don't have a ton of answers. We know McKinney and Musa and probably De La Torre as far as our eights go. Let me see who's that the fourth and fifth spot.
Mm-hmm.
Striker, get Josh Sargent back in there, give him an opportunity. He's going to have some confidence with Norwich when they start playing in the championship. They're going to be one of the better teams, which means Josh should have more opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
Let's give him some opportunities in these friendlies and the next 5 months leading up to the World Cup. Give him that shot to put his name in the hat for Qatar. So with the CONCACAF Nations League, like I said, we want to put our best foot forward, but at the same time, you can still give opportunities to players in a meaningful match, quote unquote.
I mean, it is meaningful. You got to win it. Like, you don't want to not be at the CONCACAF Nations League final next June. I mean, that.
Yeah, exactly. So it's meaningful. It's just it's not end of the world type stuff.
Right. I think you're onto something though, where it's like, we know that we're going to play the best team we possibly can. I think is the goal for Berhalter, because that team is trying to get ready for a World Cup. Mm-hmm. But there are ways to inject some of those French guys into the lineup. Even like, you don't have to start Christian Pulisic at Granada,
Right.
But maybe that's where you put
Conrad.
Maybe that's where you put Conrad. Maybe that's where you have a Georgi Mihailovic start on the wing.
Yes, please.
Instead of Anthony Robinson playing both against El Salvador and Granada, maybe that's where you try George Bello or Sam Vines, or maybe that. That I'm with you there, right? Kevin Paredes would be cool.
Scally, please, yes.
So that's where it's like, okay, you could take 3 positions on the field and say, okay, y'all are starting this game. And the next one you take 3 other guys, and you say, okay, y'all are starting this game, where it's not disrupting everything. You're still getting Pulisic, and hopefully Reyna is healthy by then. I don't know, probably not. But like, even like Pulisic and Awaya back on the field again, but they're not necessarily playing with each other. You don't. It makes it hard to evaluate it in full, but it gives them time with as good of a team as possible, so you can actually tell how they're going to contribute.
Right. Yeah, 100%.
And then we have 2 friendlies in June as well. Basically confirmed we're playing Uruguay. And I've seen a fairly confirmed report, nothing from the U.S. side, but from the Ghanaians, that we will play Ghana, which I don't mind. I think those are 2 good friendlies of teams that are going to the World Cup. Love it.
Great test.
Right, love it.
Great test. I play as many different looks as possible.
And then we've got 2 in September, which I'm not sure how they're gonna do I don't think they'll be like send-off friendlies. I haven't seen anything about that yet, because of the window is just so tight. But those 2 friendlies in September will be pretty big. I'd love to get Argentina, actually. I think that might be a good one to maybe try to work on. I know there were rumors that was in the works, but maybe get maybe get another Asian team, like go get Korea or Japan to come play.
Please.
I think there's ways to get World Cup quality teams that are going to the World Cup. They're going to be looking for opponents as well. Yeah.
The main point for me in the next 5 months, watching what the players are doing with the club is extremely important, and then getting some opportunities for some of these guys so we can have some answers, because there's a ton of question marks for me right now as far as like trying to put my 23/26 man roster together. Like, okay, who am I looking at for Qatar? There's a lot of guys that, I mean, they go up quick, right? I run up and feel great about it. And then you start getting towards the fringe and you're like, man, there's a lot of questions here. I like this guy, but what about this one? I'd really like to know what he can give me, but I can't put him down because I haven't seen him enough.
Right. Yeah. It needs to be the time where we just see those guys a little bit more. Yeah. Absolutely. It's not full tryout, but like you said, let's give as many people a tryout as we can.
Yeah, well, like I said, it doesn't have to be brand new guys. There are guys who have their name in the hat already. It just might be buried because we haven't seen them in a while. Let's get a little refresher, Again, I talked about it. Josh Sargent, he give him every opportunity to leave his name off. Does that make sense? Like, let him play himself out, but don't just leave him out.
Right.
Does that make sense?
I think that
much. Besides goal scoring, you want your 9 to score goals, but there is not a single player that I'd rather put at the 9 when we're protecting a 1-0 lead.
That's fair.
And we've got other players on our team that can score goals.
Because that's what you need strikers for.
Our 8 score, our center backs score on set pieces. But if you've got a lead and you're trying to press the absolute mess out of that team, or you're trying to close something out and you need some defensive effort. I mean, Josh Sargent is like top 3% of all forwards in the Premier League in defensive stats.
Yeah.
So, you know what I mean? Like, the dude is a workhorse.
Yeah.
So give him that opportunity to play himself out.
Yeah. No, I think that's great. I mean, we have, again, 6 matches to prepare for this World Cup. So we need to look at as many players as possible to fill out those other roster spots while also getting the core group of guys playing together. Caleb, long episode. We had a lot to talk about because it was a long World Cup qualification process.
Yes.
Thank you for sitting here and digesting all this stuff for me and with me. Where can we follow you and how can we find you online?
J. Caleb Cook 1 and USMNT Corner. Personal, it's a lot of bourbon, coffee, Atlanta United. USMNT Corner is pretty much just US.
And again, thank you for being on here. You can follow this podcast at Soccer for Us Pod. Make sure you subscribe to Soccer Down Here to get all the content from there. Thanks for sticking around. It's been a long episode. We appreciate you staying around. Caleb, again, thanks for being here. Y'all, thanks for listening. I'm Bart. I'm out.